Hey! Oh, you're here for the garage tour video? I thought that was next week. 1 minute. What is up, guys? I've had a handful of requests over the last couple months to do a garage and toolbox tour because my one tool cabinet holds pretty much all the tools I need to build a bike, which often surprises people. The list of tools needed to build bikes is actually not that extensive, but there are a handful of specialty tools that come in super useful. And of course, I have cabinets and other storage in here, so I'll walk you through the entire shop setup, showing you what tools you need to wrench on dirt bikes, as well as what I might add if I had more space or more money to spend. But first, I'm going to make a few important upgrades to the shop and toolbox that I've been meaning to make for quite some time. You can use the chapters of this video to skip ahead to different sections if you'd like, but the upgrades I'm about to show you are going to have a major impact on my workspace and are things I've wanted to do for a long time. Remember, I completely remodeled this space almost 2 years ago, and these are upgrades that I have since learned would be hugely beneficial. First of all, lighting is essential in any good workspace. You can never have too many lights, and while my shop is already reasonably lit, I wanted to add even more to illuminate the back side of the shop and provide more lighting on the side of bikes when I'm working, as sometimes shadows can make it tricky to see those hard to reach places. Hyperlight sent over a set of LED hexagon lights, and I must say I'm pretty pleased with them. Assembly didn't take too long, and then Monty helped me install them without much hassle. Lights installed, check out how beautifully illuminated the shop has become. Do not show OSHA my outlet structure. My only complaint is that the lights do not come with any sort of a switch, but I have mine set up with a smart outlet that I control with my phone. Next up, I live in Montana. My shop gets frigid in the winter and boiling hot in the summertime. For the last few years, I've just been dealing with it, but as this has transitioned from a hobby to my job, I spend more time in the shop than ever before, and climate control has been a huge item on the list. In the winter, I've been getting away with a small space heater, and in the summer, I've just been sweating. Pioneer sent over this mini split unit that has both air conditioning and heating, and will allow me to work comfortably in this space all year round. Seriously, this is an enormous upgrade. Depending on the size of your space and what features are important to you, these can range from about $800 to $2,000. Installation may be better left to professionals, but I did a lot of the work myself and learned a ton in the process. With this unit fully installed, I am incredibly impressed. It is super efficient with how it heats my space, and I can't even hear it. I was a little concerned about how loud it was going to be, and that concern is non-existent anymore. Even on the highest blast mode, this thing's super quiet, and I'm really, really impressed. If you are in need of climate control for your shop, I would highly recommend checking out Pioneer Mini Splits, and I will link them down in the description below. All right, we are finally getting to the toolbox, and I have one last product to talk about, but it's toolbox related. Before I show you the whole box, here are my top drawers. They are relatively well organized, but there is nothing to keep tools from sliding, and I'm a little OCD, so I'm always aligning them. I've thought about foam cutouts, but that's super tedious and doesn't allow for expansion or change in the future. That is where Toolbox Widget comes in. These magnetic organizers are configurable and magnetized directly to your toolbox. No more sliding tools, plus arranging tools this way just about doubles my usable drawer space. If these look like something you could utilize in your toolbox, I've got an affiliate link down in the description below. All right, now let's start with the toolbox. First, you can see here I've got a computer. This is actually my old desktop. It is incredibly useful to be able to look at service manuals and parts diagrams right here next to my workbench. This top drawer is my moto specific tools. So I'm not going to talk about every single tool, but I'll talk about a few that are particularly useful. Case splitter here, essential for engine builds. Got the pipe expander tool that a lot of people tend to ask about that I use to get dents out of two-stroke pipes. Lots of different suspension related tools in here. This is super useful. If your fork seals start leaking, you can put one of these up there and get some dirt and grime out. A lot of times this will solve your problem without having to replace fork seals. Spring puller is an absolute essential if you ever plan to pull an exhaust. I have done them without, and it is a pain. Another tool that took me a long time to buy that made my life easier is a seal puller. I used to just use a tire spoon or a screwdriver, but this is definitely nice to have. Beyond that, the clutch holding tool is super useful with anything engine related. The spoke torque wrench is nice when lacing wheels. Swing arm bearing tool makes install a little easier than the vise, but isn't really essential. Finally got myself a sag scale, and here are two different flywheel pullers, also essential for engine builds. A nice high quality chain breaker is also super nice to have in the toolbox. lots of really useful tools in this drawer. I'm not just going to tell you, oh, go buy this, go buy that. You'll kind of realize what you need as you work. These were, of course, not acquired in one purchase. They have been acquired one at a time as needed. Piston stop tools are nice to have as they can make some parts of the engine rebuild easier. A good set of feeler gauges if you're doing valve adjustments, and a gear jammer tool is quite useful as well. Got an assortment of seal drivers, different suspension cap tools, seal bullets for fork seal install, as well as shock seal bullets. This grip mat here is actually also sold by Toolbox Widget. This isn't really its intended purpose, but it actually happened to work out really well in this drawer for sorting these small tools. In general, I've been using these for sorting and organizing parts during bike disassemblies. They've been pretty dang convenient actually. So that pretty much covers the moto specific drawer. Definitely a useful drawer in the box. Let's move on. Here I've got all of my basic wrenches and Allens. You can tell I have multiple sets of each. It is very common on bikes to need two of the same size wrench at the same time. I also really like these ratcheting wrenches. They come in super useful. These are just the Pittsburgh one from Harbor Freight. I really don't own a lot of expensive tools, and these have consistently got the job done. A set of long wrenches can be nice as well when you need that extra leverage. In this drawer, I've just got different pliers, dies, needle nose, things like that, which are conveniently organized on a Toolbox widget. This tiny hammer from Harbor Freight is one of the most used tools in my shop. I love this thing and would highly recommend. The nice stubby handle on it gives you really good precision, and I use that for a lot of tasks. Decent set of vice grips is super important to have and definitely come in necessary, as well as this punch set from Harbor Freight. I use these for a wide variety of things. Initially, I think I bought them years ago for removing bearings, but I use these for all sorts of things, oftentimes with getting stuck bolts out and things like that. Set of snap ring pliers, and that concludes that drawer. Here is the socket and bit drawer. Pretty self-explanatory. A couple quick things I'll talk about. A nice set of deep sockets is super nice to have with dirt bikes. Sometimes the shallow sockets cannot reach places you're going for. And I could say the same thing about a set of 1/4 inch drive sockets versus 3/8. Sometimes I need to use these and they're much more convenient fit. Set of crow's feet. These are not used very often, but when they're needed, they're nice to have. And I think the most notable thing in here that any dirt bike mechanic should own is an impact screwdriver. If you don't know how these work, you hit this end with a hammer and it will apply some torque to break a bolt. Sometimes this is the only way to get a bolt loosened and is much more efficient than trying to use a Phillips or a flathead with your hand. Beyond that, I just have assorted drill bits and deep, large sockets. Also hate when you have to use this, but does come in handy. This kit here is used to remove bolts with broken or stripped heads. A little bit of miscellanea in here, some files, some screwdrivers, X-Acto blades, and knives. All of these small screwdrivers are incredibly useful and I use quite frequently for those really small, high dexterity tasks. Got this razor blade set on Amazon, which comes in very helpful as well. Here we've got ratchets, drivers, and extensions. This drawer is used quite frequently. I have a 1/4 inch drive and a 3/8 inch drive torque wrench. This is the Icon one from Harbor Freight. It has been nice, but with torque, I am considering spending a lot of money on a nice snap-on digital torque wrench. It's something I will have forever, and it's a super useful tool in the shop where precision is essential. This is the ratchet I use most frequently, Icon one from Harbor Freight. I like the pivot, very useful, high-quality ratchet. Here I've just got some wire and fishing line. The fishing line and this wire I use for Cerakoting or hanging parts, which is really useful. And then here I've got fast metric bolt kits. These are actually a big combined variety of lots of kits from over the years. I actually spent an afternoon one day sorting them because it is very convenient to know where everything is of different sizes. I use these kits regularly and having extra bolts in the shop is very nice. Would highly recommend fast metric. Pretty simple drawer here, some hammers, some cleaning supplies, oil wrench for my truck as well as a strap wrench, and that is an adapter for the Rabaconda for different size axles. This is my mountain bike tool drawer, and it doesn't get organized very often. I've got this big empty space because Toolbox Widget made my box so much more efficient, but this drawer is also some miscellanea. Rivet tools, code reader, exhaust plugs, voltmeter, stud finder, some clamps, some standard Allens for when they're necessary. Nothing particularly exciting about this one. Wide variety of tapes, sealants, and glues in here. Bottom drawers is where we have all of our cool kits, so I'll pull these out and show you what we've got. I've got a bearing race and seal driver kit. I used sockets for years. Finally bought one of these. Not essential, but makes life easier. Tap and die set. Didn't have one for the longest time, and this is absolutely essential when you need it. Vacuum brake bleeder kit. Would highly recommend buying one of these if you ever plan to bleed your own brakes. It takes 1/4 of the time it does without the kit, and it's cleaner. Valve spring compressor kit, not used very frequently, but convenient to have when I do need it. Same deal here. This is a crank bearing and gear puller set, not used super frequently. I bought this in a pinch to get a crank bearing off that would not have come off otherwise. This is a crank puller, absolutely essential tool for an engine build. Angle grinder, didn't own one of these for so long. $35, can't believe I didn't buy one sooner. When you need it, you need it. And this is a fuel pressure gauge I custom made, specific to KTM. I made this when I was chasing the problem on my 350 earlier this year. So that's that drawer. I've got the Tusk slide hammer bearing pulling kit. I used the Pittsburgh one from Harbor Freight for years. This one is better because it has collets of every size and I don't have to use the bread method anymore. Leak down tester to make sure my bikes are running strong. I've got a micrometer and a calipers. I bought the micrometer primarily for measuring shim thickness as it's a little bit more accurate than using the calipers. The calipers are used for all sorts of things. Essential tool. I've got a battery charger that can do both acid and lithium. This is a Harbor Freight gear puller kit. I bought this when I was working on that Skidoo snowmobile last year. Don't know how frequently this will ever be used again, but it's in the shop in case I need it. Oh, and before we get into this cabinet here, I've got a vise right here on the bench. You've seen this in so many videos. Vise is absolutely essential. This thing is bolted to the bench and is pretty damn solid. I had a smaller one from Harbor Freight for years. Didn't quite get the job done for everything I needed to do. This, I believe, is the biggest one Harbor Freight sells, and it is solid. Really have enjoyed that vise for the last few years. Now, this is not particularly organized, but I've got a stack of Pryme wheels, steel wool, polishing wheels, and different sorts of cleaning supplies. And then in here, we've got something similar going on, except I've got the Dremel, different Dremel attachments, and smaller Pryme wheels, along with gloves and things like that. The Dremel tool is used pretty frequently. Down here used to be a lot more full, and I'll show you why that changed, but here I've just got no toil filter oil, a bucket, and some cleaning supplies. Under the bench here, I've got a plethora of dirt bike stands. Most of them are just normal box stands. This one is incredibly convenient. This is a Redline Engineering scissor lift stand. This comes in handy when you've got both wheels off a bike or you're doing a full build. It's really nice because you can roll the bike around the shop instead of having to drag it around on a stand. In fact, my 350 has been on that stand, but I got this back together yesterday and it is time to put the 200 on that stand so I don't have to drag it around the shop on a box stand. Right here we've got mostly maintenance parts. These are just oil filters, KTM parts, Honda parts for Monty's bikes, as well as shim kits. I've got shim kits for 250, 350, and 450 4-strokes. These drawers are nothing but rags. I've got clean rags and dirty rags. Above the bench here, I've got a signed picture from Malcolm Smith, signed to my brother and I. We've got the charging station for the drills and impact, along with a nice bungee corded rack of shop towels. And then I've got my impact. This is from Harbor Freight. This thing has been super solid, super reliable for the last few years. And then a couple of drills. For when I really need it, the heavy duty impact sits on top of the cabinets. I try to bring this thing out as rarely as possible, but sometimes you gotta do it. You guys are familiar with this bench buffer. You've seen this in action in countless videos. I've got a coarse Pryme wheel on here right now, along with the grinder side. This thing is used constantly. This is from Harbor Freight. I think they might have actually discontinued this one, but it looks like they have another one available that's very similar. This wall, I've got T-handles, which I use all the time, a nice set of T-handle Allen wrenches, which are way more convenient to use than my Allen sets, so I use these pretty frequently now. These aren't used very often, but the 6mm is used pretty frequently on KTMs. Cerakote spray gun. These JIS screwdrivers from Pryme are a lifesaver. I use them all the time. Big old giant set of bolt cutters comes in handy when needed. I use those for tearing apart old wheels and breaking spokes. Got a level, a saw for when I'm maybe working on little custom aluminum parts, and the map gas torch, which is used constantly. The cabinets will start in the middle, plethora of extra shop towels, and then here I've just got all sorts of service manuals, the map gas torch, and back there a fire extinguisher. Variety of zip ties hanging in this door, and I'm not going to go too deep into these cabinets on specifics, but I've got wide variety of wood screws, clamps, O-rings, wall anchors, plugs for when I'm cerakoting. This is a kind of organized drawer of miscellaneous dirt bike parts, with jets, valve cores, springs, bar ends, all sorts of weird things like that. Just kind of neatly organized up in that little dealio. Thanks to my buddy Matt for sending this organizer to me, actually. Bunch of different lubricants in here. Stuck nuts thread locker, anti-seize for when I'm doing spokes, assembly lube, brake fluid, stands for my mountain bike, all that good stuff. Got an electric sander, spare air filters, funnels. I've got my air stapler up there for when I do seat covers, the heat gun, which I use frequently, especially for graphics. Fun fact, this was a corner cabinet in a kitchen, so this did not have a door. I made that door to try and match the rest. I'm pretty pleased with it. Coming over here, we've got all of the degreasers, grease, contact cleaner, WD-40, measuring cups, things like that. The respirator, which I use for cerakoting and when I'm buffing parts. And then this is the wax setup for skis and snowboards. Got the Decal Works graphic application kit, some more cleaning supplies and things like that, and then Cerakote materials. Coming over here, I have all of the fuel cans, followed by paints, and then oils and different lubricants. Up here in the corner, tucked behind the tire stand, I have a truing stand, which comes in very handy when you're lacing wheels, as well as my engine stand and engine blocks. I did screw these together. For years, I was just stacking wood, but it's really nice when they're actually just one solid piece. Tire rack loaded with fresh Shinkos. I've also got a downhill bike here that I actually bought from one of my subscribers, Spencer, when we went go-karting in Utah, so I can't wait to ride this thing. And I've got my enduro bike on the wall over there, along with a poster of the best mullet and goggle tan that I've ever had in my life. We try and keep the bikes organized in here. The snowmobile takes up a ton of space. We've got a couple bikes over here, bikes in the shed, bikes at a friend's house, bikes everywhere. This cabinet is just all miscellaneous parts and supplies from different builds and projects. And this set of shelving is the same. In general, these top shelves are gear bag storage for our dirt bike gear bags, but in the winter, I kind of utilize them more just for part storage while I'm doing builds. Got this big ass air compressor on Facebook Marketplace for $300 in order to finally get my blast set up. This has been awesome to have and has allowed me to start Cerakoting parts myself, which also explains the oven. This is the oven that I bake parts in so that I no longer have to use my kitchen oven. Can't just cruise by the Rabaconda without talking about it. This tire changer has been incredible. I've been thrilled to have this thing and has made my tire changes a lot easier. Not to mention dealing with mousses, it literally takes me like 5 minutes to change a mousse. Changing a tire with a mousse is actually easier than a tire with a tube. I've got my step ladder so that the top of that shelf is actually useful, along with a mountain bike stand, which Daniel taught me I can actually use for suspension. So now I use this for suspension builds as well. This side of the wall is all of our riding bags and helmets. I thought this was a pretty cool design when I redid the garage. So it kind of creates this nice separation where the shop itself is kind of enclosed, but creates a useful space on that left side. And lastly, big reveal that has changed everything for me is getting this big shop sink in my laundry room. This used to be side-by-side washer and dryer with this cabinet right there. And I've been wanting a shop sink for such a long time. I've been using the kitchen sink for way too long. It's super inconvenient and super dirty. So I got this massive sink from Home Depot, and this is where I've been scrubbing down parts and things like that. So now in this cabinet, we've got our no-toil filter cleaner, degreaser, hand cleaner, brushes. So guys, that is the shop, and that's how I have it set up. This garage is 19 by 19, so I'm not working with a huge space here, and I feel like I've managed to get a lot packed into here. I've gotten a lot of requests over the last few months to see a more detailed walkthrough of the shop, so I figured I would let you guys see how I make it work in here. If you have any questions at all about any of the tools or how I utilize this space, leave them in the comment section below. I will do my best to get back to you. If you're interested in some hexagon lights, Toolbox Widget, or a mini split, those links are all in the description. Big thanks to each of those companies for their support. Again, I wanted to showcase those things because they are legitimate upgrades I've been wanting to make. So that's that, and I'll see you guys soon with another video.